What's the weirdest social interaction you've ever been part of? For me, the cake definitely goes to that one time I was told by a woman in line at the drugstore, out of the blue, that she used to breastfeed me. Explanation: I was in college, and one weekend went back to my small hometown, and ran some errands for my parents. Was in a drugstore and this woman, that was roughly my mother's age, came to me and started talking. Woman: hey, are you by any chance U/H1L3E, son of, mom's name? Me: oh, yeah, do I know you? Woman: you might not remember me, but, gets closer to me, and whispers to my ear, I used to breastfeed you, when you were a baby, because your mother didn't lactate. Me: woman: me. Woman: anyway, tell your mother I said hi. See you around. Ask my mother about this when I got home, and apparently it's true, they were good friends and both gave birth days apart. When mom learned that she can't breastfeed me, this woman offered to breastfeed me along with her son. I was standing in the aisle of a plane ready to exit and head for my next flight. I hear someone say how about them vols this year, and, being a Rudd Volunteers fan, naturally turn around and start talking with him about football. The conversation is going fine, then I look down and realize I'm wearing nothing orange, the team color, and not anything to indicate that I was associated with Tennessee. The plane was also not coming from / going to Tennessee. We start walking through the aisle, so I ask him how he knew I was a Tennessee Vols fan. He tells me that a couple years ago he was in a really bad car crash and had a near-death experience. During his time out of body, he spoke with his dead father, who told him that he could make the decision whether to continue living or to go on and pass. He said that ever since that experience, he will have moments of ESP every once in a blue moon and tries to take advantage of them. I think I said something like oh wow, and hurried to my next plane. For me, it was probably when I went to see my college's advisor to talk about potentially taking an exam to prove I know a subject. Not sure what they're called, so I didn't have to retake a class. A bit of backstory: I took an online math class, got A's on all the homework and tests, but failed the class because I didn't take the mandatory 5-question pre-module quizzes that basically ask what percentage of your grade is exams, how many exams are there, etc. So I knew the material really well, but failed anyway. So I go talk to my advisor, explain the situation to her, and she tells me that those exams can be difficult, and she's not sure if it's the right move for me. She then pulls up my previous math grades and GPA, is a bit surprised, then says, wow, well you're smarter than you look. I thought that was super weird, but just kind of laugh it off, and thought that was the end of that, but I was wrong. She then calls the examination center to see if they'll administer the exam for me and what available times they would be available. While on the phone, she says, I'm here in my office with a young man named Thatcher Looper Batman, and he would like to take a knowledge exam. I've told him they can be difficult, but he's much smarter than he looks. I forgot how the rest of the encounter went, but I took the test and passed. But I'll always remember the encounter, where I found out I apparently look like an idiot. I'm going to a job interview at 2 p.m. I walk in around 1:45 p.m. and go to the receptionist to tell him I've arrived for the interview. He says okay, but we have a scheduled fire alarm test at 2 p.m. so would you mind coming back at around 2:15 p.m. I say no problem and go for a walk around the area outside. I come back in around 2:10 p.m. and a woman is standing next to the reception desk. She asks if I'm there for the 2 p.m. interview and asks if I know that I'm late. I look at the receptionist and explain that he told me there was a fire alarm and to come back. The receptionist looks at me, then at the woman who I'm about to interview with, and says I've never seen him before. My jaw literally drops. I go into the interview and flop sweat instantly. I'm dripping sweat onto the table as I'm interviewing. The woman actually left to get me tissues to wipe my face mid-interview. It went about as horribly as an interview could possibly go. Needless to say, I did not get the job. He must have had a friend or family member he wanted that job to go to, so she sabotaged you on purpose. I walked into the reception of a doctor's surgery, signed in, then sat down and waited. There was one other person there, a middle-aged woman who obviously had some kind of learning disability because she was reading a Peppa Pig book out loud to herself. A very skinny woman walks out of the surgery and sits in the waiting area, 2 seats from the woman reading. The reading woman, RW, turns to the skinny woman, Southwestern, and this was the conversation. RW, hi, what's your name? Southwestern, Louise. RW, oh Louise, that's my mother's name. Southwestern, oh that's nice. RW, do you smoke crack? Southwestern, yeah. RW, oh. And that's when I got called into the surgery and I never saw either of them again. There's a pub in my uni town that's really popular, but is full of really weird people. It's really small, so you're often sat with people you wouldn't normally talk to or interact with. Me and my, now ex-friend were there reasonably often. A couple of old guys, 70s or 80s, started talking to us and another of our friends. One's was normal, if a little cookie. The other one was not. He started off by talking about how he had 80k plus gamer score on Xbox and knew basically everything there is to know about Final Fantasy in minute detail. Then he went on to how he was a time/dimension traveler because he did drugs with some strangers and woke up somewhere completely different and it was daylight. This went on for about 45 minutes of basically just him talking. He left after a while. Turns out the other guy didn't know him at all. They'd just been hanging out all night. It's hard to describe how surreal the whole thing was. I'm home on leave. When I was in the Navy in the early 90s. Was out in a McDonald's with my mom. This woman keeps staring at me while eating. Kinda creeps me out. We finish eating and go out to the car. Mom's unlocking the door. I'm standing in front the passenger side waiting. Woman runs out and yells over to me, I can't marry you. We look over and she says again that she can't marry me. Mom and I look at each other with a WTF look on our faces. Turn back to her and mom goes, why not? Woman replies, because I'm above and beyond the power of God. Then goes back inside, sits down and continues to eat. I tell mom, I'll be right back. She tells me no one to get in the car or she's leaving me there. It was in high school when I was about 16. Our science building has 2 private study areas, small soundproof rooms that seat about 7 people. My science class that year was right outside one of these rooms, and by the final week of the semester everyone had finished their work. We basically just had free time. Anyway, some guys I know ask if they can use the study room, and after the teacher says yes they invite me in with them. 2 of the 4 walls were windows, including the one facing the classroom, so I knew they wouldn't do anything too sketchy. I hate too much noise, so I went in. The moment I entered the room, one of the guys, a complete fitness fanatic, stood up, walked over to the door, locked it, then stared directly at me with a blank expression and said, right. How big is your dick? Me and every other guy in the room froze and stared at him. After an uncomfortable 10 seconds or so, it continued. Come on, how big is your dick? I kept on awkwardly giving him joke answers, and he asked about 7 more times. By the last one I just said, why the F do you care? You think I just sit at home with a tape measure on my cock figuring out how long it is? You don't? I left the room after that one. The guy changed schools at the end of that year. He had never done anything like that to anyone before, and never did again. I have no idea what the hell happened. Weirdest interaction has to be when I was on vacation in Namibia. The group I was with was hanging out in the bar to get the best Wi-Fi signal. An older, white gentleman, 70s-ish, walks in from a side door and stands in the corner, looking at his phone. After a while he approaches the group and asks, "Og," in a thick German accent, "Are you guys American? You guys all look like Americans." Og, looking at me, "Except you look like a proper German. I have blonde hair and blue eyes." It was an interesting comment, but didn't think much of it. He starts up a conversation with the group and tells us his life story about being a professor at a local university and how he got to Namibia. He then goes on to start discussing American and world politics. Eventually his conversation turned into discussing how the Jews were in control of the banks and just saying other anti-Semitic comments. Made us all extremely uncomfortable to the point where we made excuses to go back to our rooms to escape him. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe.